Pittsburgh Steelers.
This team is the definition of being built like a house of cards. And I'm absolutely tired of having to hear this fan base. The only thing that they love the past. Name a fan base more than the Pittsburgh Steelers that love to bring the past up.
The Yankees, unfortunately.
This season, the only thing that sticks out to me for the Pittsburgh Steelers is Mike Tomlin is 150% on the hot seat. They haven't won a playoff game. They haven't. Here, let me tell you why. They haven't won a playoff game since 2016. The last Super Bowl that they played in was 2011. The last Super Bowl they won was 2009, which was 14 years ago. So 14 years ago since they've won a Super Bowl and 8 years since their last playoff wins. If you think that the Steelers are an actual contender, I actually don't think you understand football. It has essentially been the last 2 seasons that if you drew the Steelers in the super wild card round, it was essentially a first round bye because they did not put up a fight in either of those games. And as of now, I don't understand how anybody could take the Pittsburgh Steelers seriously in any way, shape, or form, just based off the past. And we're going to get into it today of what's going on currently that I don't understand why anybody would take them serious. But this franchise lives in a time frame of a decade ago, and they are in desperate need of a rebuild ever since the Big Ben retirement.
So do you don't think that the fact that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season has any effect on him being on the hot seat?
Well, neither. I mean, why would it? I look at him as pretty much in the same situation, and he's a less successful Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick got fired. He's the best coach to ever coach football. Just because they're barely squeaking into the playoffs, I don't think that really means too much in my head. I mean, it's more just what have you done lately? And if you look at what the Steelers put out, and I even go back to this quarterback situation since Big Ben's corpse was playing 4 years ago. They're the definition of a dumpster fire and are just good enough to just get by. But unfortunately, I think that this is the season where all of that crumbles, and I will get into why I think that, obviously.
All right, my second question for you is, do you have Steelers fans in your life who are considering them a legitimate threat in the NFL?
I know probably 20 Pittsburgh Steelers fans that when they signed Russell Wilson, I'm in a Discord, when they signed Russell Wilson, that they said, we're going to win 13 to 14 games this season. No exaggeration at all.
That's insane. Okay, well, that makes sense why you came in as hot as you did, because that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
And I'm letting you know that like majority of Steelers fans think this way. And I'm going to pretty much explain to you why that's not the case. And really what it comes down to is they're not a consistent football team. So let's get into it. In 2023, they went 10-7, 5-4 at home, and 5-3 away. Honestly, a pretty good record. They had a good season. The quarterbacks that they beat during this time, Deshaun Watson.
They were also 5-1 in their division, which I feel like is noteworthy.
It's crazy. That's crazy. That won't happen. Honestly, it just won't happen again. Plain and simple. QBs they beat last season: Deshaun Watson, Matt Stafford, Jake Browning twice, Jimmy G, Jordan Love, Lamar, Geno Smith, Will Levis, and Tyler Huntley. Quarterbacks they lost to: Josh Allen, Gardner Minshew, K1, Purdy, T-Law, Bailey Zappi, and Dorian Thomas Robinson. So,
yeah,
like I said, this team, like, okay, great, you guys went 10-7, but the inconsistency where you're losing to guys like Bailey Zappi and DTR and Minshew, but you're able to beat guys like Lamar, Love, and Matt Stafford. They're just all over the place.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when you were reading that off, I was like, okay, that's like not that terrible of a list of quarterbacks to beat. It's just very inconsistent. And then you named off the teams that they lost to, and it pretty much fits that same mold again. Like there was zero reason for them to lose to Bailey Zappi. What was that, on a Monday night or Sunday night game in Pittsburgh, I think?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. And So let me get into this team's offensive attack. It's piss poor. 28th in pass yards per game, 25th in rushing attack, 30th in scoring, 29th on third down, 27th in red zone. I mean, that's flat bottom barrel of the league. Now,
They were they were also one of the most predictable teams in the NFL. I have a stat, especially on early downs. I have a stat here. Early downs in the first half, if they were in shotgun, it was a pass play 92% of the time. And if they were under center in the first half on early downs, it was a run play 85% of the time. That was like when Coach Lackey found that goes back to like when Coach Lackey found the McDevitt quarterback like tipping their plays basically.
yeah,
That's high
seriously.
school stuff.
And one thing that I want to get to is everybody's gonna be like, well, Matt Canada, and they hired Arthur Smith, which if I don't know if anybody remembers last season, people were legitimately bawling over the fact that Arthur Smith was just flat incompetent. And
He
then
was
you look
bad.
back during his time in Tennessee when he was the offensive coordinator for legitimately 1 or 2 seasons, when King Henry was at the peak of his powers. And that was the name of the game. He had a great running attack. He also had the greatest running back of our entire generation behind, like in the
Yeah.
backfield. So I think that, okay, great. Matt Canada's out there. I personally don't really foresee how Arthur Smith is going to make that big of a difference, but I guess we'll see. Now, something I want to get into is the defense, because they're coined of having an elite defense. Sacks, they have some elite guys that can rush the passer. They were fifth in sacks last season with 48. Interceptions 10th in the NFL. Yards allowed 14th, points allowed 13th, and then their third down percentage was 12th. This defensive group, from what I'm reading, first off, turnovers and sacks aren't something that translate from year to year. They go up and down. Like the Eagles
Yeah.
led the league in sacks 2 years ago. They were crazy. Last year, they
Yep.
kind of fell off a cliff. So it's just like it doesn't really go hand in hand. And it
The
feels like when I
turnover,
was
yeah, the turnover luck is crazy. Like the teams that were really high in turnover luck the year before, that tends to go back to the average the upcoming year.
Yeah, and this defensive group has a lot of bounces going their way. It seems like if they don't get these bounces, this group, if you look at it, is already kind of middle of the pack, I'd say, like probably close to upper to middle of the pack. Like, but if these things don't go their way, like turnovers and sacks in a division where I'm taking every other team ahead of them right now. Um, I just feel like this defense could definitely take a step back. And TJ Watt is 150% amazing, probably one of the best players that play on defense. But it feels like every single time that they need him during a key game or something, it feels like he's always banged up in some way, shape, or form. He never seems to be fully healthy.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, like kind of going back to this defense, um, I did I didn't pull this up, but I do remember reading about how they were. You just rattled off all the stats. You didn't say how they were in scoring though. Were like points given up
Yeah, points allowed
because
13.
13th. Okay, all right, never mind then. Because I was gonna say I didn't think they were too bad as far as like points given up. More of like a bend don't break type of defense. Um, but yeah, TJ Watt is undoubtedly like one of the best defensive players we've probably ever seen. Um, but he is constantly injured, and we see their defense is just kind of held together by. I mean, they have some other guys that I don't mind on this
Alex
defense.
Highsmith.
Yeah, I think he is going to be really good. I think Minka's still really good. Um, they did add a couple. They added two new guys on the defensive side of the ball, three new
We'll get
guys,
into
maybe
that.
two like actual impact players. But um, yeah, I don't know how long the Steelers' forte has been. Let's lean on this defense and just hope that our offense can have like one good drive in the fourth quarter. And I mean, they've been doing it for how many years? It feels like. At what point does that kind of come to an end? Is
And
the real question.
and that's why I'm questioning the Mike Tomlin head coach right now. He has not been able to put together a team that's respectable in 8 years. And like whatever, the fans can say whatever they want. There has never been a time where the Steelers fans have If you look at the odds in the sports books, every single time that they've made the playoffs the past 2 seasons, they are dead last in
Yeah.
odds to be able to even proceed and
Yeah.
win one game. They're just not taken seriously. They find a way to sneak in, but ultimately being in the middle of the pack with a bad team like doesn't do you any favors in any way, shape, or
So
form.
yeah, it's probably like the worst spot that you could realistically be. You shut yourself out of getting a decent draft pick and then you lose in the first round. And then you're kind of just like stuck in this purgatory area where you either have to hope that you get a late round quarterback or a late round talent somewhere. And then that is the future, or you have to make a move kind of like what they're doing this year with let's just bring in a Frankenstein group of quarterback room and see if we can find someone that hits.
Perfect transition. So let's bring up Justin Fields and Russell Wilson because these two guys, listen, I will 100 hand up. I admit that I'm wrong about Justin Fields. I can admit when I'm wrong about a situation. But for the people who like every single person who watches the NFL over the last 2 seasons has absolutely shit on Russell Wilson and Justin
Yeah.
Fields. And then they get to
Yeah.
the Steelers, and all the Steelers fans are like, oh my, you let us get Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Like, that's how quick that these fans are like brainwashed and can actually talk themselves into thinking that either of these guys stand a snowball's chance in hell. And since the eye test, which if you've watched preseason or the last 2 seasons, if the eye test doesn't back it up enough for you about how these two guys just flat don't have it, here is some stats to back it up. First off, stop with the touchdowns and interception shit with Russ. Russ takes absolutely no chances. He's a check down merchant. He also never forces the issue. And if you watched him even play in that preseason game, he's getting passes to guys, but he is not making the right passes to the guys to be able to extend plays. He just gets it to guys and they get tackled. And his stats as of right now are completely skewed. First off, he was sacked 45 times last season. I saw a stat where he has had 3 straight seasons with over 40 sacks. That's 2 more than any other quarterback ever to play
That's
play the
insane.
position. Adjusted net yards 6.1, ranked 20th. Completion percentage over expectation minus 2.3. That's 25th. Turnover worthy rate play rate negative 3.5%. That's 25th. Right now, Russ was known for his improvisation and being able to make things happen. He has completely lost all of his athleticism. He has
That was a
never
younger version of Russ.
he has never been able to throw over the middle of the field. And without him being able to add that into his game currently, we have the numbers on Russ. We watched him play. He is absolutely a below average starter. And every single year that he rolls out onto the field, he gets less and less attractive. And that's why, I mean, look at what Sean Payton did last season. They owe him $30+ million, and they literally could not wait to get that guy out of the building. That should tell you all that you need to know. If you've been on 3 teams in the last 4 years, that should tell you about where you are in your career. So
Red flags for sure.
next, Justin Fields. Obviously, if you've been watching the preseason, he has had pretty bad preseason struggles. He just doesn't look good, making wrong reads on zone read plays, fumble issues. He just doesn't look good. And ultimately, he's in a legitimate QB battle with Russell Wilson, who sucks.
Yeah.
Adjusted net yards 5.5, that's 24th. Completion percentage over expectations negative 2.3, that's 27th. Pressure rate 38.2%, that's the highest in the NFL. Turnover worthy play rate 3.8, that's 22nd in the NFL. So both of these quarterbacks pretty much have the exact same problems. They have poor decision making, they hold on to the ball for too long, and they can't throw over the middle of the field. So I don't understand what either of these quarterbacks as of right now do to help raise the ceiling of this team or even give them a solid floor to really play with. I think they are significantly worse at the quarterback position, and I don't think Arthur Smith is going to get the best out of either of these guys.
Yeah, I think a lot of the excitement for Steelers fans is just from the fact that Matt Canada is gone, Kenny Pickett is gone, and I'm glad that you mentioned that Russ stat with what was it, like 23 touchdowns and like 6 interceptions or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the most misleading stat of all time, I think. Um, if you watched Russ last year, you know how bad that he was in Denver. And aside from the fact that Sean Payton probably definitely doesn't like him, he got benched for a reason. So, uh, and also those 3 seasons of 40 plus sacks is actually insane. Um, I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah.
And a guy that is going into another situation with an offensive line that is a little suspect, that's not a great combination.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
for guys that have that issue, it's not even the fact that this line is suspect, it's the fact that the line will have to overcompensate for these 2 guys who are unable to make decisive plays when they're behind center. That's really what it comes down to. I think that you can be able to skew it a little bit, but these guys hold on to the ball for so long, it amplifies everything that's wrong with the offensive line because they're not putting anybody in a position to succeed.
And yeah, that's what I was just going to bring up is if you can make up for having a bad offensive line with scheme, with getting the ball away quick, and you mix a guy in at the quarterback position that 2 guys actually that love to hold on to the football and an offensive line that might not be the greatest, plus a wide receiver room that's extremely light, there's going to be struggles there.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to be really in a similar position with this team in this upcoming season, and we'll obviously get into it, but I don't really foresee. I think that they got worse from a skill position standpoint, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then I think that their quarterbacks aren't that good, and I think that this defense is about a middle of the pack defense that if they don't have a few bounces go their way, that this could be a lower end from the middle of the pack group of the defense for an entire season. And I think that we are going to see them regress that way.
If this Steelers defense is as bad as you're predicting, Steelers fans are going to lose their mind because we've seen them over the past few years at least be able to stand on, oh, we have one of the best defenses in the NFL, even if their offense has been dog shit. If this defense isn't bad, Steelers fans might crumble.
That's why I'm saying right now, I think Tomlin's already weary and whatever. He can sign there's literally every coach signs an extension and then gets fired. Like it doesn't I don't care if people sign extensions or not. Cliff Kingsbury signed a 2-year extension and got fired midway through the season. Like anything's possible like
Yeah.
with coaching. So no, I do think that the team is going to regress in a way, and like I said, if you haven't won a playoff game in 8 years and you haven't won a Super Bowl in 14, I just think that there's going to be a point in time where it's like, okay, like every single season, this team gets worse and worse, and we're not getting any better. And then if the defense crumbles, which I think that there's a good opportunity that it does, it's just going to be like, okay, then like, what are you doing good for us currently? And
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be a real conversation that's going to be had this season because I think Steelers fans have been spoiled with like these mediocre seasons and trying to talk themselves into the fact that they think they're an actual contender when in all reality they really don't even stand a little bit of a chance to beat a wild card team in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're trotting Mason Rudolph out there against the Bills,
It's
that's
laughable.
it's not great. One thing that I do want to read off here that um I think kind of feeds into your narrative here is last year they were the 5th best team in the fourth quarter. They outscored opponents by 29 points, and they ended up winning 4 games that they trailed going into the fourth quarter. This goes back kind of what you said, like with the turnovers and the bounces and the things like that, and how I mentioned about how their philosophy these last few years has been let's lean on this defense. Let's try to keep it like a 1-score game going into the fourth quarter so we can get one good drive out of our offense. I just don't know if that's going to happen again. Being 5th best in the fourth quarter is for another year in a row or getting better. It's not necessarily a trajectory that I see with this team. So if you take that into account, they won 4 games in the fourth quarter, like I said. Even if you split that 2-2, they finished last year 8-9, and they're not even in the playoffs. That's probably more so of a accurate depiction of what that Pittsburgh Steelers team was last year.
I think that's fair. All right, let's go into the additions on this team. Obviously, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Cordell Patterson. They drafted Roman Wilson, signed Patrick Queen from the Ravens, Troy Fontenot, Zach Frazier, Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, Cam Sutton, Peyton Wilson, and then obviously you add Arthur Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Roman Wilson coming out of Michigan, but by no means do I think that he's equipped to step into this offense and be the number 2 wide receiver. I think he's probably a wide receiver 3 at best at this point. And he's also injured, so his training camp has been put on the back burner a little bit. I love Pickens. I think he has a chance to be a really good wide receiver 1, but he's not in a great spot with these 2 quarterbacks. And I mean, I have his stats pulled up from when he played without Deontay Johnson, and he put up some pretty good games.
Well, you can read those stats off, but I'm just sitting here thinking that the Steelers are desperate to add another wide receiver. And it seems like every wide receiver who's on the market currently, like, we need Brandon Ayuk. Well, if Tay Adams wants out, we'll trade for Tay Adams. Like, this is stuff coming from like the Steelers organization. Why are they so desperate to get a number 1 wide receiver when every single person tells us how great George Pickens is? But it feels like the organization is telling us that they don't really think that he could be that guy. At least that's the way I'm viewing it.
That's fine. I think that it's okay if you line up George Pickens as your number 2 receiver. I think he probably fits in as a very, very high level wide receiver too. But if you don't have anybody alongside of him in the rest of this receiving room, I think he probably can be a low level wide receiver 1, but like that's not the best scenario that you want to put out there from a wide receiver perspective. Like, he's had good games when Deontay Johnson was out. Like, these 3 games, like out of these couple games that Deontay Johnson was gone, he put up 3 100-yard games. So like, and it was against three good teams. Like Cleveland, he had 4 for 127 and a touchdown. Baltimore, he had 6 for 130 and a touchdown. Rams, he had 5 for 107. So like, those are three good teams. But this quarterback play plus lack of depth at the wide receiver position isn't putting him in a great spot to truly show how good he can be.
Maybe you're right. Losses, obviously Kenny Pickett, maybe one of the worst first round picks in a long time. They traded Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson. I mean, he doesn't really matter. And then Pat Pete. Do you have anybody else that they lost of note?
Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, I mean, I should have known. I shouldn't have put Kenny Pickett in there, honestly. Yeah, Pat Pete's 95.
So
old. So weaknesses for this team. I think that they low key just have one of the worst skill groups in the NFL. They have their wide receivers are Pickens, Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Calvin Austin, and Scotty Miller. I mean, like,
that's really
that's a bad group. And then you have Najee Harris, which they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Like I said, I'm reading the tea leaves of what the team is telling me about their players. If you're not picking up a 5th-year option on your guy, it seems like that you don't really find him of value to be in the building. I really like Jaylen Warren. I don't know how good he would be as like a number 1 back. I think that he's good in spots.
He's a complimentary guy for sure.
Yeah. And then obviously like the quarterback room's awful. So I just think that they sneaky have one of the worst skill groups in the NFL, and obviously getting rid of Deontay Johnson like didn't help it get any better.
Yeah, they're also starting 3 new guys on the offensive line, and they just found out that they lost a starter this week in camp. So
yeah, I have it written down here too. Weaknesses as well as the O-line, and Honestly, weakness, I'm just gonna write down here in general is just the offense. Like, the offense is just really, really bad. I don't think that they improved. Uh, I will say their strengths. I think that they drafted well, but I
I
don't
do
think that
too.
they improved to be any better this season.
Yeah.
Um, Strengths
What
go
other
ahead.
options did they I was gonna say, what other options did they have at the quarterback position? Do you know any off the top of your head?
I don't think that it's about having any other options at the quarterback position. I think probably you should have been at least somewhat okay with giving Kenny Pickett at least another chance, another full
Under a
season
new OC.
with a different offensive coordinator, somebody that you invested a first round pick in, but obviously they just didn't think that he had it. But I think now what this leads to is just like I don't know. It puts almost the team just in a really weird spot at it. I don't know what they could have done at quarterback. What I think that they should do is just tank and draft one. So,
Yeah.
because like that's what I think. Like you going and picking up somebody to win you 7 to 9 games, like doesn't really do too much, honestly. Like at the end of the day,
No, not at all.
um, strengths. I think that they had an amazing draft. I really like Zach Fraser, the center out of West Virginia. True
Yep.
Fontenot, I think is going to it fits well in that like Pittsburgh culture. Like he's going to be a dog. Peyton Wilson's an animal. Um, I just think that they had a really good draft. I like Roman Wilson. I don't know how good he'll be in the NFL. I guess we'll have to watch that play out. But on paper, I think they had a really great draft. And
Yeah, for sure.
the next strength that I think that they have legitimately the best linebacking core in the NFL. Pat Queen, um, I guess we'll see how good he is. I know a lot of people shit on him because of like Roquan Smith was telling him what to do, like blah blah blah. That's why he flourished. But I think that he's probably a pretty decent starter in the NFL. Alex Highsmith, he's a dog at rushing the passer, and then obviously you
Yeah.
have T.J. Watt, who's probably arguably the best defensive player in the NFL currently. So yeah, I think they have an all time great linebacking core.
Yeah, I can't sit here and lie and say I didn't want Patrick Queen in Philly. So I agree with you there. I did hear those same things about Roquan Smith kind of lighting the path for him in Baltimore. So we'll see how that goes. But honestly, if you're a linebacker playing behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, like how hard can it be?
Well, it's a little different just because he's the middle linebacker. It's obviously going to be
He's the guy now.
he's the voice. Yeah, he's the guy. I think that TJ Watt is an elite edge rusher that can do a lot of great things. So we'll see if he can live up to the hype. And I mean, obviously the Steelers have a great defensive culture, so I'm sure that he's in good hands.
Didn't they also didn't they trade for a corner from the Lions? Was it Sutton?
Yeah, but he's suspended for like 6 games, I think. And
Right.
he wasn't he
You are
honestly
correct.
wasn't very good last season. I said that in the additions that Cam Sutton,
Okay.
but I didn't know if it was like he isn't somebody who I think like makes their secondary like amazing.
Okay. Only reason I say that is because what I'm looking at has him lined up as the slot corner. Now, obviously, that's not going to be the case for the first couple games, but um, just wanted to throw that out there.
So my 2024 prediction for this team is I think they miss the playoffs. I think they win about 4 or 5 games, and I think Mike Tomlin gets fired. I think it's time for the Steelers to absolutely hit reset. It reminds me a lot of the Patriots teams like over the years where Patriots had all that success. The Steelers had all that success. The Patriots' success started to dwindle and things started getting really bad. The Steelers have not been successful for longer than what the Patriots have not been successful for, and they have already moved on from Bill Belichick. So I think that there's
Yeah.
probably something brewing in that organization where it's like, okay, we have gave Tomlin a extremely long leash. This is a prove it season for him. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that. And I think that if he doesn't prove it, I think that it's a real possibility they move on from him.
Yeah, I have their schedule pulled up right here, and they have the toughest schedule in the NFL from what I'm seeing. So I got the Steelers at 6-11. Um, to end the season, they have just an absolutely brutal stretch of games. They go Baltimore at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, home versus Cleveland, at Philly, at Baltimore, home versus the Chiefs, home versus the Bengals.
And they're not going to go 5-1 in the division this season. So
no, I don't think so either. I think they probably go 2-4.
So yeah, so I'm down on the Steelers. I don't think that they've done much. I think, like I said, I think it's time for them to really hit the reset button, and I don't know how they feel about that. I think one thing that the Steelers fans can probably agree with, they might not agree with everything that we said about the defense, like both of us, but I think that it's very agreed upon that this offense is bottom of the bottom of the barrel. Like there's really not much to love about this offense.
No, and I think we've just continued to see that, and that's been reiterated throughout this preseason. I mean, they both of these guys play quarterback against the Bills last game, and now it is preseason, but the Bills put out their second team defense, and they scored 3 points. So that's concerning.
Yeah, I mean they haven't looked good all preseason. So Steelers fans, Zach, me and this kid Zach Clutch, we have $100 bet on their over under and wins because he was trying to tell me that Russ we got Russ is gonna cook, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, there's something wrong with you. Like they're really.
This is in 2018.
I actually feel bad. Like Ryan Hurd texted me in a group chat and was like, they've really let us get a Super Bowl winning quarterback to lead this team. Like we are going.
That was 2019, 2018.
We're going to win 14 games.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
So it's rough, but yeah, I'm down on the Steelers. I'm selling my stock on them this year, obviously. So that's my prediction.
White clouds blowing out when we max 4-5, not the size, but it kick up, highlight.